Welcome to this meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel of the 30th of April 2025. I declare the meeting open at 2:03 p.m. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I would like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. Can we have the door shut, please? Or we'll just wait until everybody's in and the door's shut. Please take a seat. I'm just introducing this meeting of the 30th of April, and I've made an acknowledgement of country. My name is Stephen Lehman, and I will be the chair of I'll be the chair of today's panel. Also sitting on the panel today are expert members Scott Barwick and Chris Young, along with community member Robert Stas. This meeting is being live streamed to Council's website, and the recording will be made available on the website after the meeting. At this point, could I ask everyone to turn their mobile phones to silent if they haven't done so already, please. There are no apologies for the meeting today. We have a full complement of the panel. There has been one declaration of interest by Scott Barwick, who has confirmed he has a conflict of interest in item 6.3 DA 23/0202 Lot 5 Earl Street, Bowral. Mr. Barwick has not been taking part in any of the deliberations or discussions on this matter and will not be voting on this matter. Can I ask the other panel members to confirm by signalling with their hand, perhaps, that they have no conflict of interest?
No conflict.
No conflict, thank you. No conflict from me. The Council website contains a copy of the operational guidelines for the panel meetings, but I will summarise the most important points. The panel is charged with deliberating on 5 items: 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4 and 6.5 on the agenda today. These are development applications. After hearing the speakers, the panel will retire and to deliberate on its determinations. We will return to the public meeting to announce these deliberations that will be live streamed, and the minutes of the meeting should be placed on the Council's website within 2 business days. So if you can return or stay to hear the live announcements, or you can view them on the website at your convenience. So I have a list of speakers. We have no planning proposals, so we begin with development applications. Item 6.1, DA 24/0574, the construction of a residential flat building, 20 dwellings at 451 Moss Vale Road, Bowral. So I believe we have Philip Thallis speaking on behalf of the applicant/owner. Is Mr. Thallis?
I'm online, Chair.
Pardon, sorry, yes, Mr. Thallis. Thank you. Do you wish to address the panel?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, and happy to take any questions if there are. There's obviously a positive officer's recommendation for this proposal. It's fully compliant with both Council DCP requirements, and LEP is extensively reported in the papers before you. It's also fully compliant with the Apartment Design Guide, and we've submitted or what were then SEP 65 requirements, planning SEP requirements, design verification statements. There was some discussion with the officers about the car parking, the bins and the like, but we believe they've all been successfully resolved. The car park is fully compliant with the Australian standard. There's room on the curb for the bins and the like. But there's not much discussion of the merits of the design in the report. And so it is worth saying that, what we've tried to do on this prominent but quite compact site with somewhat awkward geometries, actually to design 20 really high quality apartments that will fit in very well to the area. There's not an apartment which you wouldn't be happy to live in yourself, we believe. So many of them get good sun, so many of them get good cross ventilation. Aspect to the gardens which run through the middle of the site and around the perimeter of the site. We retain the brick wall to the street. There's obviously a lot of traffic noise and the perimeter planting which is there. So the building very much sits within an established context. You can see from the elevations that the top floor is within a roof level. The other thing that's worth noting is just the variety of apartment types and sizes here, that they're all generous, they're all well considered, they're all tailored to their particular site circumstances. So I'll be brief, happy to take any questions if the panel has any.
Thank you, Mr. Thallis. There may be some questions from the panel. Do we have a question?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barwick?
Thanks, Mr. Thallis. Just possibly clarification, just in relation to storage. Sorry, I'll do it again. Just in relation to storage for the units, I'm only identifying that there's 16 specified storage areas identified in the basement, and the schedule has another 3 apartments that have storage in the garage, but I'm just not sure where that is. Am I missing something on the plans of where those other 3 apartments have their storage?
No, but there are 3 spaces which have 3 apartments which have lock-up garages.
Right.
And so they're in the northern corner. They're 1A, 2A, and 3A.
So there'd be
and
the 3 double garages.
Yes, indeed. And then, of course, there is then, because the double garage size is larger than the open parking, so there is actually room for other storage around on that northern wall of the car park.
Okay, thank you. And just one other, your thought or an opportunity that we might be able to consider. There's 4 apartments, 302 and 304, and corresponding 203 and 206, I think it is, that have their primary north face private open space balconies oriented to the north, but they're within 6 metres of the boundary with 449 Mossvale Road. Have you had any consideration about just that privacy interface for a potential future development to the north of the site?
So we understand that property is currently commercially used, and we have got deep soil planting along that boundary, and the landscape plans do show new screen planting along that boundary as well. The balconies are set in, so the glazing line is about 5.5 metres back from the living room, from the boundary.
Yeah, but the leading edge of the balcony is much closer than 5.5 metres.
Yes, indeed. It is. It's in the order of 3 metres from the boundary. Well, we are proposing, if you refer to the landscape plan, we are proposing screen planting along that entire frontage in order to give a green outlook, as well as address privacy, as well as obviously exceed the landscape area.
Right. So, okay, so it's a reliance on augmentation of landscaping along that boundary is the approach.
That's definitely our.
Yeah. I guess we're just mindful of, yes, it's a commercial tenancy at the moment, but it has exactly the same zoning as this site, and so obviously could be subject to a similar redevelopment, and just having consideration of how the interface may work in that situation was just what we were wondering what your thoughts were, but you've addressed it as a landscape solution.
Well, it's probably worth saying that the top floor is further set back. You know, you could have a two-storey house there under exempt and complying. The ground floor units obviously won't look over the fence just due to the situation. They'll look into the fence and the landscape. So, you know, if you had a semi there or some other form, you could have actually quite a similar impact in terms of privacy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Chris? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sorry. I noticed in the car parking area that the spaces, etc., are orientated towards B85 vehicles, which Council DCP requires. Have you considered how B99 vehicles under the standard can be accommodated in this particular car parking area, considering that the size of vehicles nowadays are closer to B99 or above than the B85?
We are aware that there are proposals to change the Australian standard currently. We think that's an extraordinarily regressive element to overscale every car parking space for these oversized vehicles, which would have an enormous carbon impact as well as the impact of the vehicles. Nonetheless, you'll notice in the car park along the northern side, those spaces do have that extra space available. They're over length. And then you'll also notice that the end spaces, you're required to have a metre at the end aisle to allow the cars to turn, but we've actually got that meter also available to the space itself. So the 4 end spaces have that capability. So it is more generous than a minimum. No, that's more than the standard. You only need 300 against the wall. You don't need the full meter.
Okay, so what are you telling me, that you have considered the impact of B99s on there? I'm not necessarily suggesting that there should be greater spaces, but have you considered whether B99s
we
adequately be serviced in the car park?
I'm not going to lie to you and say, yes, we've considered B99s, but there is some generosity in the car park, as I've outlined.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the panel? I don't believe there are at this point. Thank you, Mr. Thallis.
Thank you.
I've just been informed that the town planner for this matter, Scott Lee, is in the gallery and able to answer questions if we have any. Do we have any questions of the planner? No questions for the planner. Thank you. I don't believe we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this matter, so we'll move on to item 6.2, DA 23/1258, demolition of existing commercial buildings and construction of commercial building with basement car parking at 120 to 124 Main Street, Mittagong. We have the owner, Simon Pickett, who's available to answer questions. Or did you want to speak, Mr. Pickett? Okay, you're welcome. If you're sorry, you're welcome. I don't have you on the list here. Just take a seat. One at a time is probably best.
There we go. I'm on, I think. Is that right?
You are?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and panel. Of course, on behalf of the property owner, we're quite quite pleased to have reached this position with a recommendation for approval for the development. As you've probably read the report, very thorough. There's been a lot of work put in by the applicants to address the issues raised by council throughout the assessment process. And we've hopefully successfully done all of that. And now we have a development that we think is very valuable and important to the Mittagong Town Centre. We're happy to take any questions if the panel has any, but as I've said, we're quite pleased with the recommendation and looking forward to moving on with the project.
All right, thank you. Panel, do we have any questions or comments? None from Mr. Barrett, Mr. Young,
Thank you.
and none from Mr. Stubbs.
Do you have any proposals or any concepts of putting a restaurant in this particular building?
Look, the idea was to have some sort of a food and beverage offering in the building. At this time, we haven't negotiated any leases for such restaurants, but I think that'd be a good opportunity to bring some more of that food and beverage into the town centre of Mittagong.
Yeah. No, okay. You realise that there's a parking problem. There, obviously, a restaurant's going to exacerbate that if it operates during the lunchtime. So,
Look, I think with restaurants, depending on whether it's a restaurant that relies on night trade rather than day trade, I think a cafe might have an impact on parking, but I think a restaurant that predominantly operates at night time might, have no people in the basement because all the office workers and the retail component of the scheme would be closed at that time. But look, yeah, it's a valid point. I think that since Mittagong's town centre has been decentralised down towards the Big W complex, I think the town centre is in desperate need of some form of revitalisation, and I think this project is, a positive step forward in, bringing back some life to the town centre.
the traffic engineer's report, your traffic engineer's report, relies upon the on-street car parking as to pick up any shortfall on the site, but there's no, haven't supplied any justification or any evidence that that there is an availability on site, off-site. I mean, on street.
Look, it's been a while since I've reviewed the traffic engineer's report, but I think Mittagong Town Centre, there are availability of off-street car parks. There's one on Queen Street, which we own the car park that the public use free, which has about 60 spaces. But look, it's one of these things that the car parking for the scheme has been modelled in accordance with the required code. We don't have any leases signed on the project at this stage, so again, I think that the car parking is dealt with in the conditions that if there is a change of use proposed as part of the DA of future tenancies, then we need to address the car parking at that point. I think the other thing is that a lot of this scheme will be a commercial. It could be lawyers, it could be, I don't know, accountants and the like of those type of uses. So until we know the full scope of who's going in there, I guess it's as hypothetical as, it is hypothetical at this stage, and, we've done everything we can to try and mitigate any parking issues, and, I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that, falling short of putting another layer of basement, which would make the scheme unviable.
So you've seen condition 83,
Yes.
and you're happy with that condition?
Is that condition 83 the one that talks about a basement car park and any changes to the proposed uses requiring further consents? Is that condition 83? Am I reading the right? I don't have it offhand.
Okay.
Is that the condition?
Okay. No more.
Yeah.
Generally, are you happy with the conditions of consent?
I've had a quick review of them today. I haven't seen anything that is causing massive alarm, but I think that, like anything, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and there might be a few
Well,
issues.
if it isn't, you can, lodge a modification application. There are avenues for you to pursue that. And of course, you will require individual use applications for tenancies in the future. So I think that'll be dealt with at the appropriate time. Have you got it there, or is perhaps we don't need to dwell on it. Can we get that? I think the panel acknowledges the potential revitalisation value of the project, and while there was some differences of opinion about the matter of floor space ratio, it's been covered by the variation request. I think it was necessary, is my view, but there are different views on the matter, as you know.
Yeah. With respect to the floor space ratio, I guess the way that we looked at it, we could have built a monolithic structure that was on the centre of the site, which didn't allow any natural light into the individual tenancies, and that would have been compliant with the floor space ratio. But what we decided to do was pull the building apart, allow this central atrium in the centre of the scheme, which unfortunately for us meant that, you know, there's under the strict definition in New South Wales, our floor space ratio was chewed up with just breezeways, corridors between the tenancies. But look, we tried to address the issues as best we could, and you know, I think that in total, the scheme is a better design outcome than building a monolithic structure in the centre of the site. So I guess we're fairly comfortable with the way that, you know, it's progressed, and you know, the design team we used, we certainly didn't try to save money on design. We've got the best people in the business down here to do it for us. So, you know, we're very happy with it.
Beg your pardon? Is that better? It's not your hearing. Well, it could be a little bit, but sorry about that. The next item is DA 6.3, item 6.3, DA 23/0202, proposed building envelope and vegetation removal at Lot 5, DP 867717 Earl Street, Bowral. So I have a list of 3 speakers against this item. First on my list is Jane Lehman. Would you like to come forward, Jane? Have a seat, please.
All right, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, just before you go.
Am I
Try to
on?
limit it to about 3 minutes, if possible. And I ask subsequent speakers not to repeat the same issues of the first speaker, just to say, if they agree, confirm that, and only refer to new issues. And can you each confirm where you are in relation to? Do you live next door to this place? Where you're from?
Right.
Thank you.
So am I on?
You are now on.
Yeah.
Please proceed.
Okay. So my name is Jane Lehman, and I'm supporting the refusal of this DA. I represent the Mount Gibraltar Landcare and Bushcare Group, which has assisted the Council in the care, control and management of the Mount Gibraltar Heritage Reserve for 32 years. This reserve borders the north and the west of Lot 5 Earl Street and supports a nationally protected ecological community, which is an assemblage of all the plants and animals, fungi, invertebrates, microorganisms and genes for the future. We complement and fully support Ms Coyne's fulsome report for the Council and would like to assume you have read our 2022 submission, but know that you have probably only had time for the summaries. This Lot 5, for the creatures that live there, is an extension of the protected reserve and contains a steep, eroding, vegetated gully that takes the eastern flow from the mountain. It is a Category 3 creek that arises in the reserve on top of the mountain, which is its primary filter. And it is fundamentally important as a source of the Sydney drinking water. Water quality at the source affects everything downstream and has been a major focus of our restoration work. In the early days, it supplied Bowral with water. It really matters. The reserve has become almost an island in an urban sea in which it is becoming harder and harder for genetic diversity to be maintained. Every possible connection to other healthy native remnants is vital for the survival of all our native species for the long-term future. This lot extends their territory and is a gateway towards further vital links to the east, and we feel it would be irresponsible to permit destruction of its integrity, which would be forever. Please support the Council's report and refuse the damaging development of this important natural site and waterway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Leman. Do we have any questions or comments from the panel for this speaker?
Okay.
Can I just ask you before you go, you do support the recommendation? If you support the recommendation is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
That's the right terminology.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, the second speaker I have on my list is Janet Ottaviano. We have Janet Ottaviano. Come forward, please. Take a chair. If you can just introduce yourself and where you're from and give us your input.
My name's Janet Ottaviano, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I, as with Jane Leman, are against or support the refusal of this DA submission. My property borders Lot 5 Earl Street. It's an historic property. It's called the Rift Estate and it's listed on the State Heritage Inventory. It describes the Rift as having considerable regional and statewide significance as a rare, unique, remarkably intact example of a Victorian Italianate villa. The State Register particularly singles out its siting of the house and gardens at the base of Mount Gibraltar, which provides a strong aesthetic impact. Removal of a swathe of forest vegetation would leave a visible scar on the landscape and undermine the woodland setting that is so crucial to the historic context of this state treasure. This DA requires an onerous right of carriageway across our private land. Lot 5 originally formed part of the historic Rift Estate. At the time of subdivision, a request was submitted for a right of carriageway across the Rift Estate to access Lot 5. The servient and dominant tenements at the time were owned by the same owner. So the usual rigorous conditions by which a right of carriageway request are usually tested by were not done so at the time, and it was granted as a matter of convenience rather than necessity. So the original right of carriageway is a narrow track of average width of around 3 metres wide, sometimes less, with a precarious steep drop to one side and a very old, majestic native tree on the other. It's not suitable to be widened in any way, and it's certainly not suitable for the passage of heavy vehicles, emergency vehicles, or for any sort of widening which would be required to use it as access to this site. The easement already passes very close to the historic dwelling, and any increased traffic or widening of the right of carriageway would unduly impinge on our land usage and property rights. The proposed clearing of trees, and this is probably the most critical point, the proposed clearing of trees and vegetation on a steep hillside would exacerbate the already extreme flooding and erosion on ours and neighbouring properties. Rain causes torrential storm water runoff down Lot 5. The existing bush trucks funnel water onto our property. It has washed away hundreds of square metres of topsoil, heavy rock walls, uprooted trees, and it floods our field. We now have a deep ravine in an area where there was once a flat field. All of this is with only the relatively minimal tree felling that created the current narrow tracks. I have a video which I would like to show you with your permission, which shows catastrophic flooding and damage that consistently happens after heavy rain, which would be exacerbated by the proposed vegetation clearing and introduction of wider sealed roads. The bushfire assessment report states the areas of the site have a gradient of up to 20 degrees, which exceeds the legal maximum gradient for clearing vegetation for this very reason, because of the erosion knock-on effect.
Okay.
The average...
Okay, so can you sort of wind it up, please?
Yeah, sorry. So,
We understand your point.
yes. May I show you the video?
We would be, we can't really deal with information on the run.
Yeah.
It's not the way these meetings are set up. I can ask Lisa to take it from you and we'll determine whether or not we
Okay.
can deliberate with it or not.
Yes, sure.
But as a matter of practice, it's not our practice to take material on the run. We need to have had time to consider it
Okay.
properly in the normal course. But we'll have a look.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. Just before you go, Al,
sure.
are there any questions for this speaker or comments for this speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Clive West. Your hearing's all right though, Clive? You could hear me. No, it's not. So that's better. We're both.
Okay, it's
we're on board
working now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very
First of all,
much
tell us
for.
where you're from and what's your interest in this matter. Tell us where you're from. You know, physically,
yep.
where are you in relation to this site, and then proceed with you.
My name is Clive West. I don't live near the site. I live in Berrima, but I've been involved with land care, bush care, and protection of the environment for the 25 years we've lived in the Southern Highlands. We're particularly concerned with the precious environment of Mount Gibraltar, so that's why I'm appearing before you today. I'm also, besides appearing on behalf of myself, I'm also appearing on behalf of the Southern Highlands Land Care Network and Wind Zero, which is a climate change group. Both of those groups are very concerned about restoring native vegetation and increasing the connectivity between habitats. And this is really crucial to build resilience in the face of climate change. So this particular DA goes to those broader issues. We support the recommendation of the council report, which is to refuse the application. On 28th of September 2022, I submitted a lengthy submission, and I won't go into those grounds. I'll just keep it very, very simple for today. The site is particularly important or particularly sensitive in the context of its connectivity with the habitat corridor that runs between the coastal national parks and the inland national parks. In this case, particularly through to Mount Alexandra and then into the national park in the Blue Mountains. As you may be aware, connectivity maintains biodiversity and prevents gene pools becoming isolated. So connectivity builds environmental resilience to climate change. There are, of course, many other natives, I should have said, this is relevant to the survival of two endangered species on Mount Gibraltar. One is the koala and the other is the greater glider. Both of these are endangered, and this preserving this particular piece of land will improve their chances of survival. There are, of course, many other native species of fauna and flora that depend on the habitat covering the site. These animals would be greatly disturbed by the construction phase of the DA and the ongoing disturbance of the human habitation in this pristine spot. A great many people in the Shire are concerned to ensure that this DA does not get approval from the panel. One of our group had a meeting earlier in the year with Brian Hitchin, the principal owner of Tower Projects, which we understand to be the owner of Lot 5. Mr. Hitchin was informed that a consortium of individuals are prepared to purchase the land and have Wingecarribee Council manage it as part of the Mount Gibraltar Reserve. So unfortunately, Mr. Hitchin was not interested in selling the lot to the group, it's just to bear in mind that he has alternatives. I urge you to act on Council's recommendation and refuse this DA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. West. Panel, are there any questions or comments? No. So just to clarify, you realise this is an application for a building envelope?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
This is an application for a building envelope, not a
For a building,
envelope.
for a dwelling.
For a future dwelling. So, but yes, we hear what you say. You support the recommendation. I don't think we have any further questions. So, thank you very much.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah. The final item for the public meeting is item 6.4. Now, Mr. Barwick can rejoin the meeting if he would like. Thank you, Mr. Barwick. The final item in the public meeting is item 6.4, a modification DA 24/1493 to DA 21/0195 5 Alice Street, Mittagong, to amend deferred commencement conditions, number of lodges per room, existing walls, the layout of the basement level, pedestrian paths, vehicular access, and deletion of one boarding room. I have the applicant and a list of 3 speaking against the application. I'd like to invite the 3 against to come up in turn, starting with Anne Wood, and we'll hear from the applicant in reply. Anne Wood, please come forward, tell us your name and what's your interest in this matter. Do you live nearby, etc.? Where are you in
Good
relation to it?
afternoon. My
Afternoon.
name's Anne Wood. I live in Alfred Street, almost opposite the proposed development.
Thank
I'm
you.
also a member of the Berrimah District Historical Society, so I'm aware of the relevance of the building historically. I'd like to speak against the revision of deferred development conditions of 5 Alice Street, Mittagong. The proposal will have an adverse impact on the heritage significance of the heritage conservation area and adjacent heritage items, clause 5.10 of Wingecarribbee's LEP 2010. It is stated by Mr Lee in his report, and I quote, "The site has always accommodated a built form larger than a single-storey cottage that predominates throughout the conservation area. The original building was 2-storey, and the restored and newly reconstructed buildings should not be allowed to be any greater in height than the original. The State Environment Planning Policy 2009, Affordable Rental Housing, states the maximum floor space ratio of a development should be 0.6 to 1. This development is 0.797 to 1, and so it's over the legal density and should be modified to conform. In June 2024, Council adopted a medium density housing study, which included this R3 site and placed a Zone A restriction on future development. Zone A in an R3 zone allows only single-storey dwellings with rooms in the roof space, no 2 or 3-storey dwellings. Although this DA was originally submitted in 2021, Council's future planning should be taken into account regarding overdevelopment of the site. Council stated in that medium density study document, and I quote, "The medium density study will ensure that when development occurs, it respects local character, supports good design outcomes, and is in keeping with the community's expectation. It should make a positive contribution to the urban amenity of Mittagong. Overdevelopment of this site does not fit that criteria." Council has recently adopted a heritage study which encompasses this area of Mittagong, recognising the unique streetscape of Alice Street. All of the Alfred Street Victorian area houses between Alice and Helena Street have now had heritage orders placed upon them. This study highlights the historical importance of this well-preserved and maintained area of Victorian houses. The SEP Division 2 25-2A addresses character of local area and states a proposed development needs to be sympathetic and compatible to the local area. This high-density development is not. There is only provision for 14 car parks, 10 for staff, in this 47-room boarding house. The environmental report submitted states the off-street parking is available. However, the development site is opposite Alexandra Park, which is heavily used by local residents and for school sports carnivals, cross-countries and special events as well. There is also a dog park at the far end of the park, which is used regularly by local dog owners, so parking is often quite limited. Diagonally opposite this development is St Michael's School, which has approximately 150 students and 14 staff. There is no on-site parking, so staff parking and morning and afternoon student drop-offs and school bus parking also limit its on-street parking. At present, Alfred and Alice Street have a small flow of mainly local traffic. This development would increase the number of residents by up to 94 vehicles, and due to the minimal transport options available, train and bus services are infrequent. Trains run once an hour Monday to Friday and stop at 10:30 p.m. Less frequent on weekends, and buses don't run after midday on Saturday or Sunday at all. So there would be a great increase of traffic flow, creating noise and safety concerns for residents. St Michael's School students enter and exit through the front and side gates into Alfred and Alice Street respectively, so that would also be affected by the increased traffic flow. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Ms Wood. Panel, do you have any questions or comments for this speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next I have Jane Kierans. Is Jane Kierans here? Please come forward.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jane Kierans. I live locally just round the corner from this proposed development. Firstly, under the State Environment Planning Policy, Housing 2021, planning rules state that 12 boarding house rooms are allowed in R2 zones. This is best practice for obvious reasons and works well for current local residents and potential boarding house social housing residents. I'm aware that this DA was presented before the change in policy in 2021, but I'm assuming that planning committees consider best practice, and this is really not in the spirit of best practice to cram all the boarding house rooms, 47 in this proposed development, into the R3 zone. And this site also contains R2 zones, and all the surrounding houses are R2 zones. 47 boarding house rooms is a huge number, and obviously not best practice, and will be always alongside this R2 zone. It will completely change the character of this heritage area. Council states in its documents that they like to consider and keep the character of an area in the planning processes. I can see you obviously do that by making those cottages across the way from this development heritage, and it's in this heritage area. My second point, allowing a 3-storey building in this proposed site sets a precedent. The surrounding area is primarily single-storey dwellings. So please do not allow 3-storey buildings in this proposed development, for it sets the precedents for the area, overlooks back gardens and so on. Once again, changes the character. I think the traffic's been spoken to by the previous speaker. It really will be an issue for that, and it'll change the character of that local area. I thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'd like to also thank Lisa for helpful emails. For the future of this area, I would really like the Planning Committee to think about best practice for the future. In this heritage zone, 12 boarding house rooms is allowed in the R2 zone, 47 rooms is excessive. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kierans. Are there any questions or comments for this speaker? No, thank you. No, it's okay. You can resume. No, please resume your seat. There are no questions or
All
comments.
right, I was going to actually
The only
comment.
comment is resume your seat, please.
It's all right. I was going to comment about the, but Anne's brought that up about the ratio for the floor space.
Floor space ratio. Okay, thank you. Last on the list is Jeff Wood. Would you like to come forward, Mr. Wood, and tell us your interest in the matter, where you are in relation to it, and what your concerns are?
My name is Jeffrey Wood, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the proposed development on number 5 Alice Street, the former St Joseph's Convent. My wife and I are the owners of number 41 Alfred Street, and we wish to strongly oppose the proposed development on number 5 Alice Street. I understand that this new DA was lodged as a 4.55 review of the previous deferred commencement consent. This now gives the opportunity for the community to raise some of the concerns that were dismissed by the previous councillors and that are still central to our concerns today. As background to the site, it was only gazetted R3 to legitimise the previous use. However, the site has recently been amended by council such that any future development will be restricted to single-storey dwellings. This is in recognition by council of the heritage significance of the area and that the site is not suited to an R3 zoning. While the applicant has addressed the zoning issues noted in the deferred commencements consent, they have still not reduced the density from 0.08 to 0.06, so as to comply with the maximum density as set out in the SEP. This grossly overdevelopment issue has been central to the community's continued objection to the development, as it allows for an additional 12 boarding rooms and the need for the erection of the 3-storey tower. The applicant has continued to argue that this overdevelopment is of little consequence. However, the 3-storey tower and the additional 24 boarders is a major departure from what is allowed in the SEP and will set a precedent for future applications received by council. I'm surprised that council's assessing officer has allowed this. Further, the proposed development has the potential of housing 94 boarders and is now only providing 10 car parking spaces for the use of boarders, even though the development complies with the 800 metres distance to a railway station. The train service is on a country timetable and the bus service stops at 6 p.m. weekdays. There's none after midday Saturday and nothing on Sunday. This will mean that most boarders will require their own car to access services, resulting in 40 to 50 cars being parked in the streets. This 4.55 review also allows the panel to consider the most important and long-lasting effects this development will have for generations of residents and to consider the out of character with the local area test noted at Division 1, 16A and Division 3, 30A of the SEP, which is the character of the local area test. This allows the consent authority to reject a development that it considers not compatible with the character of the local area. There are two main questions to be considered when determining if a proposed development is compatible with the character of the local area. One, is the proposal's physical impacts on surrounding development acceptable? Two, is the proposal's appearance in harmony with the buildings around it and the character of the local street? The proposed development fails to meet these two tests, as well as the out of character of the local area test on the following grounds. The proposed 2-storey and 3-storey structures will dominate the surrounding historic dwellings, with physical impacts being unacceptable and out of character with both the surrounding single-storey dwellings that have existed since the 1800s and especially when viewed from Alexandra Square. The style of the structures proposed by the development have no architectural merit, instead resembling a hideous box formation design which is in complete contrast with the single-storey Victorian era dwellings.
Okay, please wind up.
And is not in harmony with those surrounding dwellings which have been maintained by generations of owners to retain the unique character that exists today. The surrounding dwellings are designed for the average family, consisting of 2 adults and 2.4 children, as opposed to the proposed development, which is capable of housing...
I think you've made your point and you've overstayed your 3 minutes, so do you want to just wrap it up in 25 words or less, please?
Right. Okay. In summary, the development fails the local character test and therefore, in accordance with clause 16A and 30A of the SEP, the consent authority must not consent to the proposed development.
Thank you. Now, panel.
Okay, just if I may, I mean, this is...
No, you passed 3 minutes.
This is such a relevant development for this area.
25 words, okay? Or less. Go for it.
Continue?
For no more than 25 words.
Okay. Okay, I'll just sum it up then. It's important that a condition is put on the development and consent to ensure that the convent building is reconstructed by the developer, regardless of its present condition, which has been deliberately allowed to deteriorate and to be vandalised. A more suitable and realistic use of the site will be something more passive, like a preschool, seniors living, nursing home or similar. Okay. In conclusion, I would like to sum up this development with a phrase that was often used by an experienced town planner that I worked with in council for many years. Permissibility doesn't mean suitability. I contend that this development, as submitted, is certainly not suitable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? No, thanks very much. I think you made your point very well. Thank you. So we have the applicant's town planning consultant, Scott Lee, who may wish to come forward and address
Thank you, Chair, and the project architect, Peter Israel.
Okay,
if you might sit with me as well.
So I'd like you to, as much as possible, address the points that have been raised. I'm prepared to give you a little bit extra time, as I gave the last speaker a bit of extra time.
Yeah, thank you.
Please proceed.
Just very briefly, what I had intended to say was simply that we believe that the development represents a very balanced outcome in terms of dealing with the myriad planning policies and controls that apply and the very challenging situation and, of the site itself in trying to restore and retain a heritage item whilst undertaking some form of, orderly and economic development of the property. Clearly, the panel would have had a chance to read the report, and the report obviously reflects the long history of the application and the development proposal, and demonstrates the efforts gone to by the applicant in addressing all of the concerns and issues raised along that process, which I think now stretches out to the past 8 years. As I just said, we think that we've reached a situation now where a very thorough assessment report from the council's planning consultant has recommended approval for the development, and we wholly support that position. As I said, we think that this is a good outcome in balancing heritage conservation and future development. We're happy to take any questions that the panel might have, but again, we're just fully supportive of the recommendation.
So panel, do you have any questions or comments for this speaker? Mr. Barwick.
Just one question, probably just a confirmation. My understanding, a few of the residents raised the issue of the 0.6 to 1 FSR. My understanding is that the way that that clause is written, it's that if a development has less than 0.6, it can't be a reason for refusal. But unlike a floor space ratio in a local environmental plan, it's not a maximum. Is that your understanding, Mr. Lee?
Well, my understanding is that the 0.6 is only through the development control plan. And so therefore it's not a binding consideration. It has been considered in the application and in the discussion of it and the design. One of the issues there, which we have discussed numerous times, is the dual zoning of the property. In one respect, the council deals with the property as one single parcel. It's nominated as a heritage site, the 3 lots that make up the total parcel. But then on the other hand, looking to deal with it as 2 separate parcels or 2 separate entities through the zoning of them and the different floor space ratios that have been imposed upon them. What we've always tried to do is look holistically at the development, recognising the differences between the zonings and the limitations that the DCP places in terms of FSR, but look at the whole of the development. We don't think there is a legal problem or a permissibility problem in terms of the floor space ultimately of the development, either individually for the boarding house development and the dual lock, or collectively.
And no further questions? Have you looked through the conditions of consent and are you comfortable with those?
We have and we are.
And I can say that the panel is concerned that if we were to recommend approval or to determine this by way of approval, that there should be absolutely no more demolition works than those shown on the drawings, and that we would, if we were to support the recommendation, would impose a condition, we would impose a condition to that effect. And would you have any problem with that?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all. I think that's the end of business for the public part of the meeting. The panel will now, thank you, Mr. Scott and Mr. Israel. Yeah. We'll adjourn to deliberate, and we'll return this afternoon following deliberations to report on those in brief live, and the full text of the determinations will be published on the council's website within the next 2 business days. So it's a matter for you if you wish to wait or not. Thank you very much. And the time of the meeting? Sorry? We can't say. We don't know how long our deliberations will take, but it will be this afternoon. So I'm sorry, but we can't give you a hard and fast time. So I declare These are the brief minutes of the local planning panel held in the council chambers at Wingecarribee Shire Council Civic Centre on Wednesday, the 30th of April, 2025. Item 1, construction of residential flat building 20 dwellings at 45 Moss Vale Road, Bowral. The panel's determination is that it was satisfied with the matters detailed in clause 4.63 of Wingecarribee Local Environmental Plan, having been adequately addressed relating to the contravention of the building height standard in the Wingecarribee Local Environmental Plan. The panel resolved to adopt the officer's recommendation, subject to additional conditions relating to the north-facing private open space balconies of units 203, 206, 302 and 304. The details of these conditions will be set out in the minutes, which will be published within the next 2 working days. The panel's reasons are to maintain the privacy of apartments existing and future in accordance with New South Wales apartment design guidelines. The voting was unanimous. Item 6.2, demolition of existing commercial buildings and construction of commercial building with basement car parking at 120 to 124 Main Street, Mittagong. The panel were addressed by Mr. Scott Lee, consultant planner and owner, Mr. Simon Pickett. The panel's determination is that it is satisfied with the matters detailed in clause 4.63 of Wingecarribee Local Environmental Plan to enable a variation to the building height development standard. The panel resolved to approve the development application subject to, in accordance with, rather, the officer's recommendation. Voting unanimous. Item 6.3, DA 23/0202, proposed building envelope and vegetation removal at Lot 5, DP 867717 East Street, Bowral. And I note that Mr. Barwick has left the room for this matter. He took no part in the deliberations or the determination. The panel determined that it refuses the development application in accordance with the recommendation. Item 6.4, modification of DA 24/1493 to DA 21/0195 5 Alice Street, Mittagong, to amend deferred commencement conditions and other matters. The panel heard from 3 speakers and speakers on behalf of the applicant, as they did in the case of the previous item, which I apologise I neglected to mention. The officer's recommendation is, the panel's determination firstly, the panel wishes to clarify that the proposal is seeking modification of a previous determination, not the consideration of a new development application. The panel wishes to affirm that the 0.6 to 1 floor space ratio is a, quote, shall not refuse if met control, and does not require the application of clause 4.6 of the Wingecarribee Local Environmental Plan. Further, the panel considers that the requirements for Clause 30A continue to be met by the proposal as modified. The panel resolves to approve the modification application in accordance with the recommendation, subject to additional conditions relating to works, which we set out in detail in the published minutes within the next 2 business days. The reason is to ensure that local heritage item is retained and protected. That concludes the determinations for the public part of the meeting. I would like to thank my fellow panel members and the council staff and for their assistance today, and the public for their attendance. I declare the meeting closed at 4:35 p.m. Thank you.